Plan Commission of October 12th, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
Anna here.
Sullivan here.
Grill here.
David Chair.
Kuzikowski here.
Oldani here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Item 3, approval of the minutes of September 28th, 2021. Commissioners, if you all take a look at your packet and see if there's any errors, omissions, questions, discussion. If not, we'll look for a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of September 28th, 2021.
Oldani seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Grill, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And that'll get us to significant common council actions. Carrie, if you would, please.
Council approve the following: an ordinance approving the rezone to and to establish a traditional neighborhood development plan unit development on portions of the properties at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway, 9300 South Fifth Avenue, and 4200 East Lake Vista Parkway. Mr. Mayor.
And again, as an update, our quarterly Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission action report will be October 26th. That will be shared with us. That will get us into our first public hearings. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped right over it. Thank you. Board of Housing, Zoning, and Appeal actions. Carrie?
Actually, that would be Lori. This is a appeal for the property at 6622 South 27th Street. The Board of Zoning Appeals reviewed the request for a variance of section 17.403E, which states commercial and manufacturing parking lots and driveways shall be located no closer than 15 feet to a residential zoning district line. After examining the testimony and facts presented, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved this variance of 13.5 feet, which will allow the property owner to place a driveway 1 foot 6 inches from the south property line. And that's it. Mayor.
Okay. Is there any questions or discussions for Lori concerning that? No explanations needed? Okay, thank you, Lori. That will get us to what is a planned public hearing for a sign appeal. And this is for Freighter and the Medical College here at Drexel Town Square. Lori, if you would you give us a synopsis of that pending public hearing?
Sure. So, sorry, Mayor, we are going to have to open up the sign appeal for the hearing because it was noticed. Mm-hmm. So we'll go ahead and do that process. And then afterwards, I'll be more than happy to describe why we're going to be asking or recommending to hold this.
Okay. If you would please then read into record. Sure. And we will begin the public hearing.
Published September 22nd, 2021, City of Oak Creek, notice of public hearing before the Plan Commission. This meeting will be held both in person and by video conference. Persons wishing to participate in the video conference must register via the website prior to the meeting. The video conference will begin at 5:55 p.m. to allow participants to log in. Persons who wish to view the meeting live without participating may visit the City of Oak Creek YouTube page at the website provided. Persons requiring other reasonable accommodations may contact the city at 414-766-7000. Requests should be made as far in advance as possible, preferably a minimum of 48 hours. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held October 12th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the Common Council chambers and via Zoom. The appellant, Zach Wagner, text key number is 813-9056-000. Property location is 7901 South 6th Street. The request was for variances from section 17.0334 Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District Design Guidelines in regards to the number of signs allowed per elevation and maximums of sign area and sign height. Variances from section 17.706J3 in regards to maximums of sign area and height. If granted, the variances would allow the applicant to install a monument sign near Drexel Avenue, a monument sign near 6th Street, 2 traffic directional signs, 2 wall signs on the north elevation, 6 wall signs on the east elevation, and 3 signs on the south elevation. The zoning of this property is DTS MUPDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Plan Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present, dated this 14th day of September 2021. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin, Mayor Dan Bukevich, Chairman. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak, please step up to the podium, or for those participating remotely, press star 9 on your phone and notify the moderator that you would like to be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record and address all questions and comments to the Planning Commission. This hearing is now open.
Thank you, Laurie. And as Laurie stated, this is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing, and then Laurie will give us a synopsis of considered actions going forward on item A. So this is the first hearing. Anybody wishing to speak? Second call. Anybody wishing to speak on item 7A, please come forward. And third and final call. We'll now close the public hearing, and I will ask our zoning commissioner, Laurie Miller, for an explanation of tonight.
Frederick did submit revised plans within the last week, and due to discrepancies between the public notice that was published on the September 22nd and what we received now, it was in everyone's best interest to make sure that those two proposals were in line with our public notice. So we are recommending that this plan be held until the November 9th meeting so that we can do a proper publication again, a published notice.
Apologize for the inconvenience, but again, if there's discrepancies in the plan, we'd like to have a complete set of plans coming forward to this commission before we do any action on it. So I do believe the actions recommended by Ms. Miller is appropriate. So if we could have a motion to hold till the November 9th Planning Commission meeting, correct?
Correct.
Any questions from the commission concerning this action? Okay. Now then, motion, please.
This council makes a motion that this item be held until the November 9th Plan Commission meeting.
Bonnie seconds.
Roll call beginning with Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Kirkavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Clifford, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Okay, thank you. Item 7B is also a sign appeal, and this one actually is submitted on behalf of the Oak Creek Franklin School District, and it would allow the applicant to install one 9-foot by 7-inch by 11-foot by 6-inch monument sign for the Oak Creek High School Performing Arts Center on the property at 340 East Putes. Laurie, if you would read that in the record, please.
Absolutely, Mayor. Published September 29th, 2021. City of Oak Creek notice of public hearing before the Planning Commission. This meeting will be held both in person and by video conference. Persons wishing to participate in the video conference must register via the website prior to the meeting. The video conference will begin at 5:55 p.m. to allow participants to log in. Persons who wish to view the meeting live without participating may visit the City of Oak Creek YouTube page at the website provided. Persons requiring other reasonable accommodations may contact the city at 414-766-7000. Requests should be made as far in advance as possible, preferably a minimum of 48 hours. This public hearing for a sign appeal will be held October 12th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the Common Council chambers via Zoom. The appellant is Andrew Cromie. Text key number is 827-9028-000. Property location is 340 East Putes Road. This is a variance request from section 17.0708, which states in part that ground signs shall not exceed 10 feet in height and shall not exceed 64 square feet on one side nor 128 square feet on all sides for any premise. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install a monument sign that's 9 foot 7 inches by 11 feet 6 inches, 110.21 square feet, in the property located at 340 East Putes Road. The zoning of this property is institutional district. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 22nd day of September 2021. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Mayor Dan Bukevich, Chairman. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak, please step up to the podium, or for those participating remotely, press star 9 on your phone to notify the moderator that you would like to be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record and address all questions and comments to the Plan Commission. This hearing is now open.
Thank you, Laurie. As Laurie stated, this is a public hearing. I will make 3 calls. This will be the first. Anybody wishing to speak? Second call. Anybody wishing to speak? Please approach podium. Third and final call concerning item 7B. We will now close the public hearing and move on to item 8B, which is consideration of that sign appeal for the Oak Creek Franklin High School School District that would allow the applicant the variance to install that oversized monument sign for the Oak Creek High School Performing Arts Center. The applicant like to say a few words. Andrew?
Yep, thank you. Andy Cromie, 7630 South 10th Street. The sign being proposed is very similar to the sign that's located on Howell and Putes for the 9th grade center, and the sign located approximately 200 yards to the east that is for Oak Creek High School. This will go with our Oak Creek Performing Arts Center. If you've seen it, it is a massive building. The signage, anything smaller, is certainly going to be drowned out. One of the key components of this sign is use of the same materials to build the Oak Creek PAC, and we don't mean same like it's going to be similar, like these are leftover bricks from the PAC, so it is going to flow very nicely with the structure of the PAC from a color standpoint and actually from a physical brick standpoint. So we're requesting this variance in order to stay in line with the other signage we have and to really add a piece that will enhance the Oak Creek Performing Arts and Education Center.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. We will now open it up to the commission. I'll start from my left. Christine, anything?
Yes, I have a question, a clarification actually. So the issue is not the height because we are below 10 inches. It's just a square footage. Correct?
It's the square footage, yep.
Okay.
Correct.
That's it. Thank you.
Matt?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Chris?
Nothing for me.
Don?
Nothing.
Fred?
No questions.
And Chauncey?
I do have a question for the applicant. Can you provide some information on what will be shown on the display part of the?
Yep, great question. So if you can see the drawing, or if you flip to the drawing, there's a couple of things. One, it will list the Oak Creek High School. That's just going to be a flat panel. Underneath that, Performing Arts and Education Center, flat panel. The digital display underneath will have upcoming events, both school related and the Performing Arts series that will be generated there. I should also mention part of putting the sign in comes with a $300,000 donation from Martin Law Offices to the school district. So it will also recognize Martin Law Offices for their generous contributions. So the Planning Commission approved this tonight. But it is primarily there to advertise what our school's doing from the Performing Arts series and what upcoming events are happening in the PAC.
Thank you.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions since this is a variance. It states signs shouldn't be more than 10 foot in height and not exceed 64 square feet, nor 124 or 128 feet on all sides for any premise. So we're basically looking at about 1.5 feet over, and I believe that's in length, correct?
Yeah, the 11.6 is length, the 9.7 is the height.
Okay. Just for reference, and I'm throwing you a curveball, and I know you ain't gonna know this off the top of your head. The police monument sign, how large is that one? I drove by that just recently. It's almost the identical sign.
I can't tell you the height and length of that, but I can tell you that the existing monument sign on the corner of Putes and Drexel for the high school is 7 feet tall and 10 feet by 8 inches long. So this is going to stand taller than the actual high school monument sign.
Okay. Yeah, and I just drove by and I kind of scoped the area out, and I wondered on such an open area in Putes if I don't want to call it a billboard, but we're putting up a rather large sign. I'm trying to think of prominent monument signs we have throughout the city. The police kind of jumped to mind because I did go by there. The Salvation Army, I don't think goes as high either.
Media Center has one that's higher.
And what does the community centers go? No, and I mean, I threw you a curveball. I didn't expect you to answer that one. I don't know. What is the existing high school sign?
The existing high school monument sign is 7 feet tall and then 10 feet by 8 inches long. So this will be 2 feet taller than the high school sign.
Oh, because I'm looking at the variances and, you know, the location of the sign, or the proposed sign, and I don't know, you know, in consideration, you take in the location, the height, the overall size, the appearance, the number of signs, and we have 2 monument signs probably within half a block of one another.
That's correct.
Because, you know, right in our own ordinance, it says location of other signs in the vicinity of the proposed sign. And then if you take into account the community center, another half block, and again, different institution, and I probably shouldn't mix that. So I don't know, do we have to go this large with it? What's the reasoning for the size of this?
So the size is in relation to the size of the facility itself. So the performing arts education, probably the single biggest asset we have if you were to single it out. And the board went so far as to create a board policy that it is really its own facility while attached to the high school. But it has its own facility set of standards, processes, different than every other facility we have in the district. It's also important to note that our Oak Creek High School is not advertising for the Oak Creek Performing Arts and Education Center. We are treating it as a public place as well as attached to the school. So it truly has a public function dissimilar to the high school, which hosts events and people use it. But this is really designed, one, as a learning institution, so teaching our kids things about the theater, but providing a space for our community to gather as well, to get to see great performances, whether it's theater, whether it's music. But it is considered something different than our normal school.
Just seems extraordinarily large when, I know you say square footage wise, it can't by any means be bigger than the high school facility. There's a 7-foot sign.
Not on its own, certainly not. But the high school sign is also raised in proximity to where the high school is. And our Performing Arts Education Center is lower by scale, given the footings for that particular building and where it starts on the road, and still exceeds the height of the high school in and of itself.
But it still measures 11.6.
The width, yes.
Of where it sits on the topography, whether it sits on a hill or wherever, it's still that height.
The height of the regular sign is,
9.7.
yes, so the one that they're
the height,
proposing is
I'm
9.
sorry.
The width is 11.6.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So it is
You're
still underneath the
correct.
10
It's
feet
9.7.
height. It still stands though taller and wider than the main sign for the high school, which is also EMC sign.
So we're 2 feet higher than the normal.
Correct.
And how much longer?
I believe 1.5 feet longer for the,
Oh, from 10 foot.
PAC
from
sign.
the variance.
correct.
I mean, it's a nice looking sign. I don't know if a foot's gonna make a difference one way or the next. To me. Andrew say, hey, am I wrong? I don't know.
I was just gonna say, if we do it a little smaller compared to the size and the height of the building, I know how high it is. It's just not gonna stand out and be more appealing to the public or even the student. It's not gonna be attracting attention like this huge, beautiful building there. It just have to be in relation size-wise. And a foot is not like, oh my gosh, it's gonna block a lot of area. It's just a small variance. So
Okay,
I
no, I
think that's
appreciate the
adequate.
input. Anybody else?
I'm kind of on the same wavelength. I think partly is they serve, while the main sign is there for the high school, they're serving 2 different purposes. And so the sign down here is going to be advertising and discussing what's going on at the PAC. Now it's a foot taller, but it's all, again, relative, I think. In It might be a foot taller, but I think it's within scale of the building though. That's just my opinion.
So as we rework zoning code, should this be a discussion to say signs should be appropriate to the scale of the building and not so much maybe on the setback from what this thing sits on the road? I'm going forward because if this one goes through, the next building comes in and let's just say it's a large building that wants a monument sign and let's use, for example, I don't want to throw a name out there, but let's say a large and multi-purpose spec building comes in the area of 300,000 to 400,000 square foot, and they go, well, appropriately speaking, our sign should be 12 foot high.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's an interesting topic of conversation that we can have at the next zoning code update discussion meeting. I do believe that in the code update, there are multiple sizes of monument signs that will be allowed, but appropriateness is something that needs to be defined, and I think that we can do that in the code update.
Yeah, and I don't want to pick on the school in any way, shape, or form, but we wrestle with this quite a bit every time a monument sign comes through. And we had a prominent business on Howell that was denied a monument sign, strictly on the size and setback. And
It's just not the size, also the location of that sign. You cannot put it on an intersection that kind of block the area, so it has to be in a.
You're correct, but the one we denied sometime back didn't block an intersection at all. It was on a main thoroughfare, similar to the location here. Not near an intersection.
I know,
You're blocking
I know.
a traffic triangle. So.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, if that's gonna be discussed later, that we just have to have different aspects, like you said, not just the location and the size. So it has to be looked at from different perspectives.
Okay, appreciate the input from everybody. So, okay, commissioners, if you feel comfortable.
I do have another
Yes.
question. So for the actual size of the sign, did it also include the brick as part of it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then based on that, so can the applicant share just a little more information on how you could potentially make the sign smaller? Any other options?
I could have Mike come up. I don't design signs, so I'm not quite sure.
Hello, Mike McDonald, Lemberg Electric and Signs, 4085 North 124th Street. I had to think about that. It's in Brookfield. For the way the sign is designed, we're going to use or utilize the existing brick that they still have left over for the building. The tower, if we would shrink the only way to do it would shrink the tower in width. And it's hard to build with the bricks. The way we designed it, you can build the bricks so they're aesthetically going to place in when they actually construct it. I mean, you're not going to save that much square footage by shrinking it up that much anyways, but it's going to look aesthetically a lot better the way it's designed.
And the reason I asked, because it sounds like you want to have the fairly large sign. However, if you make what would you call it? The part that's holding the sign smaller, maybe that'll help.
The actual ground base of the sign?
Yeah, not
I think she's
only
talking about the
width-wise,
base.
but the height.
Okay. You're suggesting possibly shrinking the base of the sign down?
Because it's 2 feet higher than the other sign, is that correct, Lori?
It's 2 feet wide
The length is what's concerning. That's why I talked about the tower.
The base is very similar to the base that's in place for the other sign for the high school.
Okay.
The difference is the height, overall height of the sign is taller, but it's also longer, so that increases the square footage.
So what were you saying to?
The reason I just started a discussion about the tower, the only way to shrink it, we're okay with the height wise, is the length. I think that's possibly a concern. If we shrunk the tower in width, we'd have to work with the bricks, the modular bricks. It's hard to construct aesthetically. There'd be a lot of bricks cut, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, which leads me to one more question, and Matt, I'm going to defer to you on this. The city, as well as the school board, put a significant amount of thought and effort and money into the crosswalks there and sight lines, following issues we had there at crossing from the students. Does this any way affect us traffic-wise at the crosswalks or with kids crossing? It's a large sign, and I mean, it is located, 10, 12 feet off the road? I mean, I want to cover bases safety-wise after what we experienced at the high school a few years back.
So the specified location that they have there, our crosswalk is actually on the eastern side of the driveway. So yeah, you have good line of sight coming out of the driveway for anybody that's walking or crossing the road, and you have good line of sight to pull out. So I'm comfortable with the placement of it.
Okay.
Yep.
It's as long as engineering's reviewed it, and because that is a challenging situation for students at times. Okay. Okay, any further discussion, questions? Motion.
Just one additional question. I want to make sure I understood this correctly. So the size of the sign in comparison to the size of the building, it's not similar to the high school, because the high school is larger with a smaller sign. Is that correct?
I apologize, I wasn't quite following what you're saying.
Oh, so
I think I can address your question. The high school certainly in square footage is bigger than the PAC. There's no doubt about it. It's a massive building, right? But in pure height, the PAC far exceeds the high school. Its base is lower. It stands taller in certain parts and certainly is high. So like if you were looking purely at a height standpoint and you were to put them on a level surface, that PAC will exceed the height of the high school.
thank you.
Okay, commissioners, it's your favor as to what you would like to do.
Seifert moves that the planning commission approves the sign variance allowing the installation of one 9-foot 7 inches by 11 feet 6 inches monument sign to be located at 340 East Peach Road.
Anna seconds.
Roll call beginning with Commissioner Carrillo.
Carrillo, aye.
David, no.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Anna, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Okay, congrats, you guys are in.
Thank you.
That will get us on to item 8C, and that is consideration of conditions and restrictions for a request of the University of Wisconsin Credit Union for a conditional use permit for a financial institution with a drive-through facility on the property at 7902 South Main. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This section is conditions and restrictions for the conditional use permit for the area in red on the screen. It is for a financial institution with drive-through facility in the center of the property. It is part of the mixed-use subdistrict in Drexel Town Square, and part of this does include a 6,000 square foot building. On the screen right now is the concept development plan that was presented at the last meeting, kind of giving you an idea of where the proposed building is, where the parking is located, also where those remote ITMs are. There's also an area reserved for community use that it will be programmed at a later date. So if you turn to the conditions and restrictions, section 3 identifies the site use and restrictions, maintenance and operation requirements. So these are subject to DTS MUPDD regulations. There shall be no more than one financial institution with 3 drive-through lanes for remote services. Uses shall be limited to those allowed by the DTS MUPDD, and these conditions and restrictions mentions the build to zone requirements as well as the mixed building and landscape zone requirements that is per the general development plan. There will be a requirement for at least 60% of the linear edge along Main Street to be building facade, and we are currently working with the applicant's consultants on the design of the building to ensure that it meets that requirement, as well as to add, wherever possible, along the west side, a building entrance for connection to that public street. And that is in, that's at the beginning of page 3. As far as the drive-through and drive-up facilities are concerned, they are limited to the 3 that were shown on the concept plan. They must meet the local code requirements in regards to lane width. Also identifies that there should be clearly defined pedestrian crossings where there are walkways that intersect drive-through access lanes. Drive-through and drive-up windows and lanes are not permitted on the side of the building facing Drexel or Main Street. And efforts should be made to conceal portions of a drive-up lane which is visible from Drexel Avenue. Orientation should be configured such that parking areas for adjacent tenants and their patrons are not encroached upon, blocked, or made difficult to arrive at. All the drive-up and drive-through lanes have to provide sufficient queuing space for at least 4 vehicles, and those cannot block any parking spaces or driveway access points. They can also not impede any pedestrian access to the building. Under number 7, protection canopies or similar structures are not permitted within the front or street setbacks for Main Street or Drexel Avenue. Pneumatic tube carrier systems and independent clearance bars are not permitted. Therefore, these ITM lanes are going to be the kiosks only, and then curb and gutter, possibly bollards. But there will be no clearance bars, there will be no additional canopy systems unless something changes within the design of those. Additional signage will not be allowed as a large feature of any canopy structure or microphone or service system. This is trying to prevent signage as part of those ITM machines. Lighting dedicated to drive-up lane illumination shall also meet parking area lighting requirements. This is going to be demonstrated through a photometric plan that will be presented for Plan Commission review. And finally, the audible level of the service system should be kept to a minimum. So that's basically saying that your ITMs cannot be excessively loud. Signs are required to adhere to the DTS MUPDD General Development Plan and Regulating Plan, as well as all applicable sections of code. And the rest of the maintenance and operation is regarding common areas, snow removal, maintenance of stormwater areas, screening of waste collection systems, and the responsibility for maintaining all of those trash enclosures. Parking and access are going to be required to be provided in accordance with DTS MUP and applicable sections of code. And lighting, again, will be required to comply with all sections of code. Under Section 6, the overall minimum height of a 1-story commercial building must not be less than 20 feet from the finished floor to the highest part of the building. That is a requirement for design standards within the PUD. Under B, windows and glazing, that's requiring the specific percentages on the elevations that are per the PUD. So your primary or special condition facades have to have a minimum of 30% of that clear glazing that we talk about. A non-entry facade is 20%, and there is an allowance for up to 15% of the required glazing to be substituted with an appropriate alternative as approved by the Plan Commission. And then all building materials must adhere to the General Development Plan requirements. Time of compliance for this particular CUP is the standard 12 months from the date of adoption, and that will be a requirement if this is moving forward. So if there are no further questions from the Plan Commission, there is a motion on the screen that suggests approval of the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit. Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Would the applicant like to say anything before we start and go to commission? We'll need your name and address, please.
Yes, David Iwanowski with Key Architecture, 906 Hampshire Place in Madison. Available to answer any questions. We've reviewed the restrictions and conditions that you have outlined here, and with some additional consultation with staff, I think we understand them and look forward to working with the city, the Plan Commission, and staff as the plans move forward. So we, as I said, be happy to answer any questions. Cheryl Weisensell, who's the facilities director with UW Credit Union, is here as well, can answer any more operational credit union questions. So.
Well, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for being available tonight and stand by. So we'll go to commission. Chauncey, you want to start us out? Anything?
Yes, I do have a question for the applicant. So I just want to make sure I understand for the ITMs and the ATM. From our last discussion, was there a total of 4 of those?
Sure. What we are proposing is 3 drive-up ATMs, which you see ITMs, which you see in the picture here. The credit union would also propose a walk-up ITM, which is either in or adjacent to the front entrance of the building. They're also looking at the potential for some other locations for that within the building, depending on how the rest of the plan works out and the elevations along Main Street, as well as the common or community use to the south. But so 3 drive-up ITMs and 1 walk-up ITM.
Okay, and then also just a question in regards to the ITMs and ATMs with the canopy. So will there be a canopy over those?
We do know that was a condition that was noted in there. Typically, they do have some type of protection provided, not unlike what you see at Associated Bank, for example, where there is some protection. I think that's something that we would certainly look forward to discussing with staff. We understand that the intent is to keep those minimal. While the machines are designed for exterior use, they do much better if they're protected both from the sun as well as from the elements. But it is something that we have done in a number of different ways. The credit union has done in different ways. So,
thank you. And then a question for Carrie. So is that an option to add something outside of a canopy just for weather protection?
So what we can do is look at the wording that is proposed here. I think what it's trying to say is we're not going to be allowing one large canopy to cover the entirety of all of the ITMs. If they are constructed in such a way with, design materials that comply with the DTS and have a small individual canopy for each of the lanes, I think that's something that could be considered. There is one more step. Common Council has the ultimate approval authority over the conditions and restrictions and conditional use permits. So at that point, we can amend the language to make it a little bit clearer that it's not one large canopy that would be allowed. Also, it's pertaining a lot to canopies connected to the building as well. Canopies that are integrated into the architecture of the building to provide that weather protection for patrons walking into the facility. Those are things that we encourage, but something that's going to cover a drive lane, for example, that's not something that we're looking for. We're also not looking for a freestanding canopy. So I think that's what this is trying to get at. But a small canopy attached to, like I said, the actual structure of the ITM is something that I think we could probably have a discussion about. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred, anything?
I just have a question about the green space on the north side of the building next to the sidewalk. Is there any requirement how that has to be as far as width or space?
There is not a requirement in terms of width or space. You will notice a utility easement has been outlined there. There are restrictions within that utility easement for certain kinds of landscape plantings. However, as these plans progress, we would be looking at some kind of either small community like seating feature, bench or something like that integrated with a landscape plan in that area. I'm not saying that there would be a bench there. I'm not saying that there would be a specific community feature in the north and the south, but there would be particular attention paid to this corner in terms of landscaping and its presentation to the public as the entrance to Drexeltown Square.
Thank you.
Don?
I have a question from Mr. McLean. I had a question about the canopies too. Typically, I'm not familiar too much with the UW credit unions. But do you typically see these drive-throughs in the middle of the parking lot detached? And if so, do they typically have a canopy over all of them?
This is the ITM technology is fairly new to the industry and particularly to UW Credit Union. They have done more traditional drive-ups with the canopy and a teller window. This technology, being remote, allows communication between a member and a teller that is remote. They don't have to be in the building. So they would not typically do a large canopy over something like this. As I said, we're working right now on a few other projects that have similar technology that just have a small cover over or a canopy over each one of the ITM. So wouldn't propose a large canopy over all of them.
So would the individual canopy be over just the ATM to protect it or over, say, a car coming under?
It's really just over the ITM with just enough so that as you reach out, if you're depositing or whatever, it protects you from the elements. So it's a small canopy. And we'd be happy to provide you with information on the types of canopies that have been used on these and similar facilities.
Yeah, would that be a different proposal at a different time?
Yeah, it would be part of site and building plan review, but I can give you an example. Whenever North Shore Bank presented their plans for 200 West Drexel, which is right across the street from us right here, their remote ITMs had individual canopies over the ITMs. As a comparison, Educators Credit Union, which went in over on the outlot by Water Street Brewery, that has one large canopy covering their ITMs. So you've got two different areas, or two different examples that you can take a look at. They're going to be going the North Shore Bank route and providing just the canopies over the remote ITMs themselves.
So we have allowed one large canopy over.
That was part of an outlot, a perimeter outlot, which is subject to a different set of rules within the PUD. That is in a different sub-district, and that's why we are saying that a large canopy would not be allowed on this particular lot within Drexel Town Square.
So actually, where I was going with that, I'm actually in favor of some kind of canopy. I mean, you're going to have cars coming in there in the snow. I don't want to get chintzy with the canopy because you're going to have cars in the snow. I'm more worried about snow. Rain's going to stink too, but the snow will just build up there, and you're going to expect people to be driving up. So I kind of was hoping to see some kind of canopy for both, not only the ATM and the arms, but the cars. That's just my thought more than anything, and we can talk about that when the time comes.
Yeah, I think we'd be looking for an architectural component to these ITMs for those canopies. Typically, I believe those canopies are probably just about 6 feet, going from the back of the structure and then extending out. So I think it'll provide quite a bit of protection. It's not uncommon to see that kind of structure in, for instance, your typical quick service restaurant drive-through facility.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay. Chris?
All of my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Can somebody explain to me?
Commissioner Carrillo, I don't think your mic is on. There it is.
Can somebody explain to me the traffic pattern, especially when using, so when you go through and you're done using one of the remote areas, do you make a right? Do you make a left?
Sure. The way that the current site plan is oriented, the ITM traffic would move from south to north, so up on the page. And when you get to the end, yes, you have options. So for example, a member who maybe completes part of their transaction but needs to talk to somebody inside can take a left, park, and go inside. Or somebody who wants to leave to go, say, over to some store to the east could go out and go the other way. One thing that we found is with a number of these facilities, the members, if there's clear signage, have no problem turning right or left. You obviously have to be able to see the person next to you. You'll note that the ITMs are offset, so you don't have that blocking your view immediately adjacent to it. So the idea is to provide options for the members. You also want to make sure that as somebody pulls into the parking lot, that there's not a dead end. That's our preference. So as you pull into the parking lot, you can again go either south, I should say, or east out of the parking lot. And then there's stacking space there so that the cars that are queuing for the ITMs don't block the traffic lane. I think we pointed out last time that part of the reason that this parking lot is laid out the way it is the general development plan calls for an extension of the existing parking at Mattress Firm and PetSmart. So the parking essentially on the east side is really the extension of that parking lot. The needs for the credit union members and staff is significantly less than that. So it's a combination of parking for their immediate needs as well as accommodating the development-wide needs.
And so what we have in the plan is enough to stack 4 automobiles.
Excuse me. We do need to look at the geometry, but we understand that it has to be 4 stalls, 4 cars, I should say, stacking there. So
I'm assuming it's because of COVID, but every time we go to the bank now, there's huge long lines. And then, especially the bank that I use, we're 6 deep, 8 deep, and then that will take you into that traffic, coming
right
to the parking lot.
Part of the reason why there are 3 ITMs is they understand that there will be the need for that. There is an addition, there would be a walk-up ITM, and there will still be traditional teller services within the facility. So yes, there will be times, I'm sure, where that gets more traffic than others, but again, there are options. If those lanes are full with 4 cars or more, you can pass by the south or the north. So
all my questions have been asked. Thank you.
Yes, I actually do have a question. Is there any reason why it was designed to be at the center of the lot versus on a corner? It doesn't conflict with all driving people. It just have to come up very carefully so you don't see anybody coming left and right.
are you saying the building further north on the lot or?
Center, yeah.
Yeah.
So
We actually, in early discussions, did have the building shown further north, and I think for a couple of reasons, including the vision triangle, which I don't think is specifically outlined on here, have pulled the building back, but certainly would consider extending it further to the north. But there, I think, was some preliminary feedback that if it was too close to Drexel Avenue, that wasn't desirable either. So.
talking about the center of the lot, the ITS.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
No, it's not of the orange, the building. The
Sure.
ITS, it's in the middle of the traffic.
Right.
So there is a lot of cross point where people can T-bone each other. You know, not everybody pay attention. So my question, why exactly in the middle? Why can't it be on a corner where we reduce the amount of conflict?
We certainly could look at other options. We did consider different traffic patterns and different locations, as well as different quantities of ITMs, and it was felt that this was the best balance. But we certainly are open to looking at other options for traffic patterns.
Yeah, and it echoes what Don was saying, because if you put it on the, I don't know what is the north or south, I don't know how that goes, but on the side, you will have more queuing that can store along the line of the parking. So you will have extra storage that can accommodate for
Sure.
users. So it's just, I find it very hard that this is going to be safe and effective location.
Well, we certainly can look at it. Again, trying to balance the total number of parking stalls that are on the site. And I think earlier plans showed more parking, so this was a balance between that, but we understand.
I know you're trying to maximize the, but again, if you have the ITS, you won't need all of those slots.
Sure.
Right? So it's just kind of have to balance somehow. Safety is important too.
Okay. Anybody else before I open up with a couple questions? So, very quickly, can somebody show me where, let's start with dumpsters. Where are they going to be located? I don't see the enclosures laid out anywhere.
Sure. Excuse me, I think I can answer that. In recent projects with the credit union, we've incorporated the dumpsters within the footprint of the building, and that would be the intent here. Because they're a fairly clean operation, I mean, it's mostly paper goods and those kind of things. There is a small lunchroom, but they have regular refuse service. So it would be in the corner of the building. In this plan, it would be in the southeast corner, kind of in the lower right, with gates that obscure the trash area or whatever. So it's
It would be adjacent to the building.
within the footprint of the building, yes.
Do trucks empty that, or is that done by, like we have city carts, totes,
Sure.
60-gallon totes?
Typically, it's with small dumpsters that are then wheeled out and done before or after hours by a refuse service, so.
Okay. Touching on what Christine said, we have the entrance, the driveway cut. Does it make any sense to line it up wherever the ATMs, what are they, ITMs are, if it went further to the east?
Again, that's certainly something we could look at. I think much of the traffic will be going to the ITM, so this may actually have a calming effect to try to slow them down rather than going straight ahead, but we certainly could look at that.
I guess I didn't close this up. As far as the enclosure goes adjacent to the building, Carrie, it's adjacent to the building. Do we ask that that's made of masonry?
It's integrated into the architecture of the building.
It is.
Yes.
So staff has no problems with
The
that?
concept renderings that we received didn't provide any immediate concern, but that would be addressed at the next step should this move forward.
And as per the Drexel Town Square PUD, glazing requirements?
Glazing requirements are still in effect.
They are?
Yes.
And that's at 40%?
No, it's 30% for your primary and 20% for your, let me just get to that section. Your primary, your special condition facades are a minimum of 30%, your non-entry are a minimum of 20%, and up to 50% of the requirement can be an alternative treatment per plan commission approval.
Okay, so we're cool there. And then last question, and Assistant Chief Havey, if you have no questions, you don't have to come up, but does fire have any concerns with access into this lot to get to that building? I'm sure you guys would just cruise over the medians if need be, but no concerns from fire. Okay. Seeing nothing else.
One
Brett?
quick question for Matt.
Yeah.
We're talking about utility easements. Is there enough space between the sidewalk and the parking lot? I mean, usually you have about 8 or 10 feet on that, depending on what we have in the utilities.
Without dimensions there, it appears that you have roughly 10 feet from the utility easement to the back of curb on their parking lot, judging off of the size of the sidewalk on Drexel, which is 8 feet. So it looks like about 8 to 10 feet is what I'm kind of surmising just from looking at the drawing.
I know there's a certain dimension for easements for the utilities.
So there's a certain dimension of size of easement, not distance from an easement to a paved surface. You could basically pave right up to the edge of the easement.
And in this case, Commissioner Seifert, that utility easement dotted line is actually the southern portion of that easement. It continues to the north. So that's the limit of the easement. It will be, the width is kind of inclusive or goes to the sidewalk and in some cases does go into the sidewalk.
Does that easement contain telephone, fiber?
There are multiple easements in that area,
Okay,
so.
I guess more concerning would be for Mr. Seifert, thought is probably water and sewer, which I believe is on the other side of the roadway of Drexel. I don't believe it runs on the south side of Drexel. But I'd have to verify that. I think that's what you're,
Yeah,
as far as that purpose.
water and sewer are one thing, but the other electrical and so forth. It's just that if you have multi-utilities going through that area, you need more space. And I just don't know what's going through there right offhand.
Yeah, there's definitely gas and electrical and cable, and there are multiple easements out there within that combined utility easement, but there is no setback to an easement. Really, it's what you can do within it. You can't place any buildings over the easement, and you can't place certain landscaping in the easement, but there's no real setback to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, and just to clarify also, those different easements have different widths, and the largest width is probably, I'm assuming, what's being shown by this dotted line, but we will definitely have that on subsequent plans.
Any further discussion? Okay, then we'll look for a motion on 8C.
Oh, question. How are we gonna do the motion with the request to revise the location of the ITS?
You don't need to actually do anything special for your motion.
Okay.
We will incorporate those comments into the conditions and restrictions.
Okay, all right. Okay, I can go. And I move that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopt the condition and restriction as part of the conditional use permit for a financial institution with drive-through facility on the property at 7902 South Main Street.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with myself. Aye.
Kuzikowski, no.
Hold on, the aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Sullivan, aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
That will get us to 8D, and it's a sign review, master plan submitted by HSA Commercial Real Estate for the existing multi-tenant building at 610 West Rosson. Lori. Darn it.
All right. She's got appeals.
And I was
I've
so
got some
confident
plans.
in that one.
So this is a master sign plan for the existing multi-tenant industrial building at 610 West Rosson Avenue. You may recall that this property was before the Plan Commission for site and building plan review back in March of 2018. It was constructed and completed in 2019. And since January of 2020, they've had one tenant, so they've only needed one sign at this point. At this point, they are looking for the master sign plan so that they can accommodate up to 3 tenants on the property. And in a nutshell, it's one sign per tenant space, and then on the end caps, they're asking for permission to put additional signs for those tenant spaces. That's not uncommon. It's pretty much what we've seen elsewhere. The Plan Commission does have the jurisdiction over approving end cap wall signs at this point in the review. The south, they are going to be allowing it's in inches, so 366.5 inches by 32-inch wall sign for each of the tenant spaces. That's about 81 square feet, and it would be allowed up to a maximum of 100. That's in compliance with code. They will be raceway mounted, and there we go. Looking roughly like this. If you are questioning the height of the signs, it's a little bit hard to see, but there are existing lights that prevent the signs from moving any farther south. So that's why they look a little bit high up in the building, but that's really the only place that they can be accommodated. End cap tenants would be allowed an additional sign of 181.5 inches by 55.1 inches, which comes out to about 69.5 square feet, up to a maximum of 100 in conformance with code. And again, raceway mounted. Finally, they are going to be proposing one monument sign for the 3 tenants, and that is located outside of all the vision triangles. It's on the upper side of the pond, and we double-checked with their design engineer regarding the stormwater, and there is no impact for the location of the sign. We will need a revised landscape plan just showing the plantings at the base of the monument sign so that we have that on file. Otherwise, it is a compliant sign. And there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Applicant, any statements, or you want to wait for questions if you're in attendance? I'll take that as we'll wait. Okay, commissioners, Christine?
I have nothing, thank you.
Matt?
I have no concerns. Thank you.
Don?
Nothing for me.
Chris?
Nothing for me.
Don?
Nothing from me either.
All right, Fred?
No questions.
Chaucer?
No questions.
I myself have none myself, so we can breeze right through to a motion, please.
Well, Donnie moves that the Plan Commission approves the master sign plan submitted by Tim Hahn, HSA Commercial Real Estate for the multi-tenant industrial building at 610 West Rosson Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all revised plans are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, starting with Alderman Guzekowski.
Guzekowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Sullivan, aye.
David Chai. And that will get us to 8E, and that is Plan Unit Development Amendment. Again, it is an amendment for an existing PUD on the properties at 1998, 1997, 1900, and 1880 West Creekside Crossing Circle. Carrie.
We got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what the PUD amendment is requesting is to allow for development monument signs within the PUD itself, establish the standards for it and the design. And it also requires a little bit of extra work on the city's part because we have to amend a different section of the code in order to allow these to happen in some respects, but we'll get there. This is part of Creekside Crossing Marketplace, which is Zone B6 PUD. There are no other changes proposed to the PUD at this point. The amendment is something that's kind of just a check in the box, if you will. The amendment was also made for Drexel Town Square, so we're just having to accommodate that language to allow for really one sign within the right-of-way, but that's on the next agenda item. So there is a suggested motion for approval here for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. At this time, we'll put it up to the commissioners, make sure you're clear on Carrie's explanation. Any questions?
I do have a quick question for Carrie. Just for clarity, when we're saying development signs, this is as they're building?
So this is for a couple of signs. Your monument sign that's advertising the development itself. Your entry signs that are kind of monument signs that'll maybe give 1 or 2 tenants on them. Your wayfinding signs, which are actually larger than what we allow by code right now. And then also a decorative, what they're calling an obelisk, which will be in the center of the roundabout, which is really the one that's part of the right-of-way consideration that requires the code amendment. I will mention that page 3 of 7 of the conditions and restrictions is where all of the changes are being proposed. So under section 4D, signage for each of the parcels within the development shall be in conformance with code. These are conditions and restrictions and all other applicable sections of the municipal code. No sign proposed within the public right-of-way shall be permitted unless and until an amendment to section 6.27 of the municipal code regarding projections, obstructions, and encroachments to allow those said signs has been approved by the Common Council. And then the following development signs are allowed within Creekside Crossing Marketplace as part of a master sign plan approved in accordance with subsection E above, which is just the requirement for that master sign plan, which is next on the agenda. 1 site entry sign located within an easement benefiting the lots within the development on the southwest corner of Lot 4 of CSM 9268. This will make more sense in the next agenda item, I assure you. The sign shall be no closer to the property line than 6 feet, shall not exceed 16 feet in height as measured from the ground surface adjacent to the center of the bottom of the structure supporting the sign, shall not exceed 17 feet in length, which is inclusive of the base, and shall not exceed 272 square feet per side with a maximum of 2 sides. Number 2, 2 entry signs, 1 at each entrance to Creekside Crossing Circle at a minimum setback of 10 feet to all rights of way, Each sign shall not exceed 16 feet in height as measured from the ground surface adjacent to the center of the bottom of the structure supporting the sign, shall not exceed 9 feet in length inclusive of the base, and shall not exceed 144 square feet per side with a maximum of 2 sides. One sign within the center of the Creekside Crossing Circle roundabout. This sign, inclusive of all elements, shall not exceed 12 feet in height as measured from the ground surface adjacent to the center of the bottom of the structure supporting the sign, and shall not exceed 4 feet in width inclusive of any base. Wayfinding signs no less than 4 feet from any public right-of-way line may be allowed as part of a master sign plan approved by the Plan Commission. Each sign shall not exceed 10 feet in height as measured from the ground surface adjacent to the center of the bottom of the structure supporting the sign, shall not exceed 6 feet in length inclusive of the base, and shall not exceed 60 square feet per side with a maximum of 2 sides. Finally, monument signs on individual development parcels within Creekside Crossing Marketplace shall adhere to the requirements of the master sign plan as approved by the Plan Commission. No box or cabinet signs other than logos with accompanying channel letters in conformance with all applicable code sections shall be allowed.
Thank you, Carrie. Questions, are we clear on the proposal going forward? This will lead us into the next item.
They're very much tied together.
Yes. So we'll take a motion. Fred, question?
No, I have no question.
Okay, motion, please.
Okay. Seifert moves that Commission recommends that the Common Council approves the amendments to the existing planned unit development for the properties at 1880, 1900, 1997, and 1998 West Creekside Crossing Circle after a public hearing.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner O'Dani.
O'Dani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Sullivan, aye.
Bill, I.
David Chai?
Guzekowski.
Okay. That will get us directly into the next one, which is a review of the proposed master sign plan for Creekside Crossing Marketplace at 1998, 1997, 1900, and 1880 West Creekside Crossing Circle, and we'll turn it back to Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these are the signs that we just reviewed in the conditions and restrictions. So they are requesting a site entry sign in 3 different locations. They're kind of labeled a little bit differently. And each of those sizes that is mentioned in this chart corresponds to those sizes that were mentioned in the conditions and restrictions. And here's the overall sign plan. The different signs we'll talk about, I kind of color coded them just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to review these. So the site entry sign, that's really at the southwest corner of the development, which I'm going to confuse you with directions here. It's the northeast corner of Drexel and IKEA Way.
That is the road right before the home, correct?
It's where the apartments are proposed. So the Creekside Crossing apartments that were reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission, this is the lot that will have that sign on it as well. Then there are 2 entry signs, one off of the northern portion, the northern entrance to Creekside Crossing Marketplace off of IKEA Way. That will have an entry sign. And then off of Drexel, which that road is just a continuation of Creekside Crossing Circle, but it's the north-south leg. That will also have an entry sign. Wayfinding signs are only shown in 2 locations. However, they could be scattered a little bit more throughout the development as it progresses. And then the center of the roundabout will have this obelisk feature. So that site entry sign that's right on the corner of IKEA Way and Drexel Avenue, which will be the apartments lot, this is the proposed site entry sign for that. So the materials for it include Fond du Lac rustic ledge stone for the base, and that will be a consistent material used for all of the monument signs and the wayfinding signs throughout the development. A non-illuminated Corten faux finish cabinet. So that's that rust color that you see for the sign itself. And those letters will actually be individual channel letters affixed to the sign. The letters themselves will be illuminated internally, but the cabinet will not be illuminated. And then halo illumination will be for the lettering on there is a panel there below what shows as Creekside Crossing Marketplace. And then finally, the Creekside Crossing Marketplace emblem will be attached to, I believe, all of the monument signs in some respect. And this one will have, it will be externally illuminated with the same lamps that we've seen for the rest of the signs within the Creekside Crossing Marketplace. Before I move on, are there any questions with this particular sign?
I do have a question. Does it meet the size-wise, does it meet the requirements?
The size that is shown on the screen was accommodated in the conditions and restrictions that we just reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have the two entry signs, the north entry sign and the south entry sign, and that's what these are going to look like. They're a little bit taller, but they're also serving kind of as wayfinding for vehicles entering and exiting. Same materials as previously. The only difference here is that there will not be the halo illuminated letters on a backer plate. But otherwise, the same materials, the logo will be externally illuminated with the lamps. Are there any questions with the entry signs?
Commissioners?
Okay. What they are calling an obelisk is kind of a tower element in the center of the roundabout. That's all stone, and then it will have the Creekside Crossing Marketplace emblem externally illuminated on the sides. It's really just kind of a decorative feature. It gives you a little bit of a breakup of the road in the roundabout. Will prevent people from just going right through it. Are there any questions with regard to the obelisk?
I do have a question. So this centerpiece, is it, aside from creating like a conflict with traffic pattern, how about the snow storage? Is it going to be used for snow storage?
I don't believe that it was identified on the snow storage plans. I believe snow storage areas are elsewhere in the development properties.
We just want to make sure that, because that can, especially with the height, that can obstruct.
And this is a public street as well, so.
Okay, that's it.
Anyone else?
Okay.
To me.
And then finally, we have the wayfinding signs. These are going to be a little bit shorter. These are more pedestrian oriented, but again, utilizing the exact same materials for the stone base. The faux Corten cabinet, which will not be illuminated, but the channel letters affixed to it will be. Those will be internally illuminated letters, and then the externally illuminated Creekside Crossing logo. Now, again, they're only showing these in two areas, but the requirement is if there is a wayfinding sign, it would have to be approved by the Plan Commission in terms of location. They would be required to adhere to this particular design and the dimensions. And they would have to be adherent to all of the setback requirements. Are there any questions with regards to the wayfinding signs?
I do have a question. So where will these be located again?
There are only two locations that have been identified as of right now, and they are identified as future wayfinding signs. So this is really dependent upon how the development progresses, because that will determine probably one, how many you need, two, where they need to be, and three, who's going to be included on them. But where they are showing them are the entry points to the roundabout from the west as you're entering into the development, and then as you're entering from the north, or I'm sorry, from the south going north. So from Drexel going north, and then from IKEA Way on the west going east.
Thank you.
Any other questions? With regards to the landscape, in the roundabout and at the monument signs, that is developer responsibility, or that fell with the PUD, that fell with the developer or owner, correct?
The roundabout, I can't actually recall. I know that there is coordination within the right-of-way itself, you know, the regular right-of-way for the straight portions of the road, as well as the development parcels. So there is coordination for the street plantings to coincide with the development plantings, because there are those areas where the setback is actually closer than what would normally be allowed to the right-of-way. If you'll recall, the hotel had about a 3-foot distance with their landscaping, so there's variations throughout there. But as far as the actual maintenance of the landscaping within the roundabout, that I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to hold me up on anything. I just wanted to make clear, because I thought the landscape fell with the developers around on these signs. And
typically, that is the responsibility of the developer to maintain landscaping around each of the signs. Now, caveat to that is these tenant signs, that'll go to the tenant themselves.
Correct. And I guess, you know, the difference is in that center roundabout, it's still identified as Creekside Crossing Development.
It is, and I guess it might be part of the development agreement, but we'd have to check what the maintenance responsibility would be.
Just a question, so.
I actually have a question to echo that. I thought that's a public road. Anything in the public road, it will fall in the maintenance agreement with that.
I think it would depend on the development agreement, what was put in there.
Well, at the time of the development agreement, we didn't have these sign plans. So I will defer to Commissioner Sullivan if there are any other clarifications.
The maintenance during construction until acceptance would fall under the developer. Once it's accepted by the city, the development agreement is basically closed out within a year. So we're not going to put any maintenance for any extended period of time in there. I believe it's handled, I believe it was handled under one document, and don't want to misspeak, but I believe the maintenance was handled under a certain document that was worked out between the city and the developer.
I was wondering how that went, because as Carrie had stated, I don't think that was there to initially begin with, that I remember.
I think there were always discussions of where the signs were going to be and what signs were going to be allowed, because again, the B6 district does allow for more and larger signs than in other districts. As far as the landscaping maintenance is concerned, however, I agree with Commissioner Sullivan. It's probably in another document, and apologies, we just don't know what it is off the top of our head. So these are the tenant monument signs, which again will kind of correspond with the other development signs. The difference is you are only going to have the stone base with the faux corten cabinet. These letters will not actually be individual internally illuminated letters. They are actually going to be acrylic adhered to the cabinet, and the cabinet itself will have exterior illumination. That's the difference. And with that, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Okay. Seeing none, motion?
And I move that the Plan Commission approves the master sign plan submitted by Walden OC LLC for the Creekside Crossing Marketplace development on the properties at 1880, 1900, 1997, and 1998 West Creekside Crossing Circle with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. Two, that all revised plans are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Fred.
Seifert, aye.
Jan, aye.
Anna, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Bill, aye.
David Chai.
Guzekowski, aye.
Donnie, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have plan review, site landscape related plans for the SAI group on behalf of Electrify America for an electric vehicle charging station on the property at 171 West Town Square Way. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Plan commissioners may recall that there was a similar proposal for the Tesla charging stations on 171 West Town Square Way. So this is going to be immediately west of that existing charging station area. This is within Drexel Town Square, so it is within the jurisdiction of the PUD. The proposal is to allow for electric vehicle charging stations. Now, the difference between these charging stations and the Tesla stations is that the Tesla stations are proprietary. You can only charge a Tesla vehicle at those charging stations. The proposal for the EV charging stations in this submission allows for multiple vehicles with different types of charging connectors to charge up at these stations. So 10 stalls will be converted and 6 will remain. There will be 6 charging stations, and equipment will be within an enclosure that is similar to the one that's out there for the Tesla charging station. No real signage is proposed other than for the parking stalls themselves. And there is one small, typical MUTCD type parking sign that is proposed to be affixed to a proposed light pole. That actually will require approval by the Public Works Department to be affixed to that pole. If that doesn't get approved by DPW for whatever reason, then they'll just need to come back to us at the planning department. We'll help them find a suitable location for that sign. On the screen right now is the proposed site as well as the proposed landscaping, and staff would like to thank the consultants very much for working with us to incorporate landscaping that will not only screen the EV charging stations, but the enclosure and the proposed transformer. Unfortunately, there is a transformer out there that was associated with the Tesla charging stations that was supposed to be screened and for whatever reason did not get screened. So this one will have some landscaping that will soften that area. The proposed elevation that's on the screen is kind of giving you an idea of what the charging stations would look like from Town Square Way. There is a bit of a berm there though, so some of this would be slightly, not really screened per se, but just kind of, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for, obscured, that's the word I'm looking for. One new pole that will be in conformance with the Drexel Town Square requirements, and then landscaping in front of that proposed enclosure. The Trex fence that's being proposed will again be similar to what's existing, just a different color. And there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Christine, you want to start us off? You got anything?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, Matt? Don?
Nothing for me.
Chris?
Nothing for me.
Don?
Nothing for me.
Fred?
I just have a question about how these stations actually work. And then time-wise, you come in and plug in and you're there for 2 hours, or does it take 8 hours, or?
I don't believe I believe they're rapid charging for all stations now. So it's not, the 8-hour requirement is really for something that is a home use. And if we could open up the Zoom panel to allow the applicant's consultant to speak. But I think it depends on the vehicle that you have and the charging. There are 2 different charging connectors that are going to be allowed, are going to be available for people to use. And I believe, if I looked at the website correctly, the maximum would be something like 2 hours. But is there a way that we can get the Zoom participant to open up her line?
Now, keep in mind the Tesla, and I just became aware of,
Lorraine?
I just became aware of this with the Tesla charging stations a couple hours back, actually, believe it or not. We're only one of 2 locations in a city that are superchargers, so you can literally charge a Tesla in 15 minutes at the Myers lot. I did not know that. Probably because I don't have a Tesla, but.
Lorraine, if you can hear us, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide comments.
Okay, can you hear me?
Lorraine, if you can speak a little bit louder, we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing you.
Okay, I apologize. Hopefully you can hear me now. Don't know if I can get any closer to my microphone.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Okay, we weren't able to hear you. I think we can hear you better now.
Okay. All right. Is that better? To answer the question, it only takes anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes for a charge. With these chargers, they are the fast chargers, DC fast chargers.
Lorraine, you're breaking up a bit. Is there any way that you can put the time in the chat?
Yes.
Thank you. While we're waiting for the chat, are there any other questions?
I guess I do have one. The proposed LED light fixture, the pole mounted one to illuminate the area, will that be a match to what exists in Drexeltown Square?
Yes, that will be the guard co with the Belmont pole. Lorraine says that it takes about 20 to 40 minutes for charging.
That's the other question is, with our fire department, is any safety hazards that we may have with these charging stations and the batteries?
Good evening, Mike Avey with Fire. As far as the charging stations, we have not any issues at this point. More with the vehicles themselves, the lithium-ion batteries, there have been issues throughout the country. So it's something that we're aware of and are, forecasting what those issues are, and tactically we will take care of those, but nothing specific to the charging stations.
Lorraine has also indicated that these are DC rapid chargers.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Other questions for Assistant Chief Avey?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
No, excuse me, Kerry, real quick. Do you know how many, so you got the Tesla charger and then we have the DC rapid charger. Is there going to be another request for another type of charger that's going to be, wanting to go up here? Or what is it, do you know?
We could. This would provide a total of 16 charging stations. So Tesla plus the EV would be 16. Lorraine further clarified that there's no fire hazard from their end. The equipment is designed to shut off at the source in the event of problems during charging. So it's very possible that we will see more requests for charging stations or whatever technology improvements we see for vehicles, for anything. Alternative methods of transportation, we may see those come up. We've had a couple of inquiries on those scooters that you see around town. Unfortunately, they've not provided more information, so I can't really answer any questions for you right now. But it's something that we anticipate, but we don't know what it will be or where it will be.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a good question, and not just at Drexeltown Square, but you're going to see this pop up in all of Wisconsin, because we have to build out this infrastructure. It's a big part of the ARPA money, and again, with movement going to green fuel sources and the absence of a carbon footprint that fossil fuel vehicles leave, you're going to see more and more of this throughout the area. So, whether it's at a Myers lot or, just shopping malls or apartments for that matter. So you will see more of this. Any other questions? Okay, barring none, motion please.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the plan commission approves the site and building and landscape plan submitted by Lorraine Spencer, SAI, for the Electrify America electric vehicle charging stations on the property at 171 West Town Square Way with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes shall be screened from view. 3, that the landscape plans are revised to include heights of all screening plants at the installation and maturity per code requirements. And 4, that all detailed, revised, and finalized plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Anna seconds.
Roll call. Starting with Commissioner Chandler.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Great, thank you very much. That gets us to our next item, and that is a review proposed for the master landscape plan submitted by Dave Decker of Decker Properties for multifamily residential development on the properties at 8100, 8146 South 27th Street, and 8100 South Orchard Way. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Plan commissioners may recall that as part of the PUD, there was a requirement for the submission of a master landscape plan for the PUD to be submitted for review and approval by the Plan Commission prior to the review of any project within the plan unit development, which is why the landscape plan is a separate item on the agenda from the rest of the plans for site and building plan review. There are several concerns with regard to what was proposed, and we have been in discussions with the applicant and their consultants, so we are in the middle of addressing these concerns. Specifically, screening of parking from 27th Street appears to be inadequate, as is just the general landscape treatment along 27th Street. We are showing, as part of the plans, that there's landscaping shown in the buffer area on the east. That is supposed to be a tree preservation buffer. It is a buffer to the park area immediately to the east, but in plans for the Colonial Woods development, of which this used to be a part, there was a retention of landscaping in that 50-foot buffer. So there are some concerns for just removing every part of the vegetation and then replacing it with a few trees. That's probably a little bit unfair to the plans themselves, since we are in discussions about them and making some revisions to them, but that buffer area is slightly concerning as well. Street trees have been provided along Orchard Way, but they are insufficient with regard to the requirements for public street trees. We are missing some requirements to comply with the code in terms of the details for the landscape plans, heights of plants at installation and maturity, minimum caliper for the trees, those kinds of requirements, basic things like labeling each of the plants. Staff was not in a position to propose a recommendation for approval of the landscape plan as presented with these concerns, which is why we are recommending that the proposed landscape plan, which is on the screen right now, actually be held to allow the consultants to address some of the concerns raised by staff, allow those discussions to continue, and bring that back before the Plan Commission on October 26th. If you wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of the landscape plan, I do have it broken out into quadrants for the west, which is essentially from the intersection of the public and private road to 27th Street, and also east, which is the public road area, and mostly for the C5 and then 2 of the A4 buildings. But the suggested motion again is to hold action on the proposed master landscape plan until the October 26th meeting. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. I think Carrie kind of laid that out pretty well. Any questions from the commissioners?
There was an email that was received late this afternoon and was forwarded on to the Plan Commission. It is at each of your stations. There is a request that the subsequent plans, which are next on the agenda for review, be considered for conditional approval, the condition being that the landscape plan is revised and approved by staff. Staff cannot approve the landscape plan per the PUD. It must be approved by the Plan Commission. So there is that distinction there. However, as we will discuss in the next agenda item, the Plan Commission does have a couple of options.
Thank you for the alert of that, Carrie. You know, in light of incomplete plans, I would fall on the side of consistency. And again, bring it back on the 26th would be my thought pattern. Commissioners, you each are entitled to your own opinion, but that'll come out in the vote. So
I agree.
somebody'd like the motion to hold? I think it's appropriate. Who's it go? Oh, sorry. Would you like to come up? Sorry. Yeah.
Good evening, Eric Drazkowski, 100 Camelot Drive, Excel Engineering. Thanks for taking the time this evening to hear the plans out. I guess I would like to just comment on a couple things here. First, if we are going to come back for the October 26th deadline, when will the plans be due?
We would need the plans no later than. You put me on the spot here, Eric. Now I got to get a calendar out. The 19th.
Okay. So I guess what we would love to see is to keep moving the project forward. Conditional approval on this landscape plan. I believe the revisions are minor in nature. Okay. So I would love to have a conditional approval of these plans, with staff's approval of the review of the plans at a later date. I mean, I think all we're talking about is beefing up the landscaping along 27th Street, which is pretty simple, right? The buffer yard, I just would like to address that. In that 50-foot buffer yard on the east side, there's no existing trees in that buffer yard currently. It was my understanding that that was like a root zone protection area there. So, and plus we have a whole woods there. So I believe that gives us a beautiful buffer to the east, to the north. We talked about screening on the north, of which we did. Screening of the parking lot from 27th Street. I would argue most of those existing buildings are the screening. And if you recall, we had to extend the masonry down along the edges there as well. So, but again, we can easily work with staff, I firmly believe, to beef up the landscaping along 27th Street, along Orchard Lane. I mean, it's pretty simple to me, but.
I think we're pretty explicit. We did want the plans to come back here in the first round of it to come through this plan.
So excuse me. So will Plan Commission actually be reviewing the planting materials and the layouts?
Well, I mean, they'll look at the overall plan.
To answer your question, yes, the Plan Commission will be reviewing the landscaping for conformance with the code, and that includes the materials, and the specifications for the landscape plan.
I have a question. Define simple. You're saying it's pretty simple to address. What does that mean?
Right. So if you guys have the time, I would love to go through the code requirements then, since you'll be the ones approving. I mean, is that something that's feasible? So
I guess answer me this. If we go ahead for the purpose of moving this through and keep the project going, and I think we're all in favor of that, and the landscape plan never materializes to what it should, and it remains what's on paper, which we're not in approval of, what course do we have then?
Well, then we get into a series of, do we issue building permits? Do we issue occupancy permits? It gets into, conditions of
So why
approval.
don't we just go with consistency and follow our processes?
Well, and that's part of why we recommended holding the item, so that we still can have those conversations with the consultants and get you a landscape plan that staff is comfortable presenting to the Plan Commission. And not only does it meet the code, but it also achieves the goals for the development that we are all on board with, which is to create a development that everybody is proud of, is successful, is presenting the luxury apartment product that everybody is reviewing tonight. So we don't feel that the landscape plan should be something that we design on the fly.
I agree.
So I think that there are conversations that need to continue to happen, and staff cannot approve the landscape plans per the PUD. That needs to come before the Plan Commission. So I do think that the discussions need to continue, and I do think that we can get to a point where the landscape plans are revised in a way that the Plan Commission and staff and the applicant are all on board with.
Sure.
Last word.
So I guess the way I see the code is to answer your question before about simple. So if I follow your landscaping ordinance as a site as a whole, it talks about one ornamental tree every 35 lineal feet. Okay, so to me that's simple. We'll pick ornamental trees. We'll put them every 35 feet along Orchard Way and along 27th Street. So to me, that's simple. Things that are not simple, for example, is parking lot screening. So it talks about if there's parking areas abutting the residential district line or the public right of way, so the parking areas, and then you would follow underneath that. And that's where it talks about landscaping screening along the street. So we really only have 5 parking stalls along 27th Street, so there's some interpretation that I'm gonna need help with. So hopefully, I guess that's why I'm almost asking the Plan Commission, since they have to approve it.
Well, to kind of answer your question, if it was that simple, why wasn't it not incorporated in the plan, the landscaping plan? That's number one. Number two is, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, we're asking for maybe maximum of 2 weeks. I don't think 2 weeks will really hold the project that much. Things take time for it to be designed and scheduled. So it's not going to really put your milestone in a very bad situation. So that would be appropriate. Now, the comment about the parking stalls screening, as Carrie mentioned, this is the entrance to Oak Creek. So any parking, it needs to be shielded because you don't know who's going to put what car out there. So being screened by landscaping, you still have an inviting and the luxurious feel of that neighborhood.
Sure.
So I agree with that. So that's my input on this.
Okay. Any other comments?
I have one comment.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I guess this is more just of a thought process. The next item is plan review. We're not going to stop our plan review because the landscaping is put on hold, from my understanding, correct?
So that would be part of the multi-step options that the Plan Commission can consider. In this case, we do not feel comfortable with the landscape plan as proposed, which is why we're recommending the hold. The wording in the PUD is such that there has to be a landscape plan presented for Plan Commission approval prior to the subsequent development plans. I think we're comfortable enough moving forward with the review of the other plans with the condition that the master landscape plan is brought back for Plan Commission review at a date certain. That's, I think, absolutely acceptable.
I think that's a good compromise at this point. I mean, if we're going to hold this item, at least we're giving the option of moving forward still with the project and reviewing the plan the subsequent of them returning with the master landscaping in 2 weeks, I don't think that's gonna slow your project up, Eric. I think it's a good compromise at this point. If the commission's willing to consider that, I'm in favor of considering it, obviously.
The other option is for the plan commission to hold, which is what the recommendation in the staff report was. But we're not at that item yet.
To hold both of them.
That was what the recommendation was, to hold both until these plans can be presented to the plan commission in a form that everybody's comfortable with, presenting to the plan commission for approval. But there is the option that the plan commission could conditionally approve the rest of the plans.
And I'm myself, you know, and I did this earlier on the school sign. I went with consistency. That was the deal, and I'm going to stick to consistency on this and hold. That's my opinion, but I agree. You're all entitled to each your own. So.
Problems.
Okay. Motion.
Seifert moves that the planning commission holds action on a proposed master landscaping plan submitted. Okay.
Yeah, you only need one submitted by, sorry.
Okay, I was just reading it off, but anyways, submitted by Dave Becker Properties for the properties at 8100 and 8146 South 27th Street and 8100 South Orchard Way.
Anna seconds.
Roll call, starting with Christine.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Now that will get us to item I, which is review site, landscape, and related plans, again, submitted by Dave Decker Properties for multifamily residential properties at 8100, 8146 South 27th Street, 8100 South Orchard Way. Carrie, this is the second part of what we were talking about.
Yes, this is all part of the same development, which is currently zoned RM1 PUD, and the proposal is for 218 apartment units in 10 multifamily residential buildings, including a clubhouse and outdoor pool. We did have a CSM that kind of reconfigured the properties and redivided them, along with showing that reconfigured Orchard Way, the public portion, on a CSM that has yet to be recorded. That will be required to be recorded before any building permits are submitted for review. And of course, the proposal is subject to the PUD that we've been discussing, including those conditions for plan commission approval of the landscape plans. So on the screen right now is the proposed site plan. And the color coding is just to identify the buildings. So each of the red buildings are the 44 unit buildings. The blue building is the B1 10 unit townhouse style building. The two yellow C buildings are the 8 units. The two green are the 6 units. And the purple is the 4 unit building. And then the orange square is the clubhouse with the pool next to it. We also have the large wetland area with a 10-foot buffer that has been shown. That 10-foot buffer basically says that you can't drain your hard surfaces there. And on the screen right now are the proposed parking counts. So for each of the A buildings, those large 44-unit buildings, there will be 1 underground space per unit. And then on the surface lots, and this is not including any of the on-street parking for either the private or the public road, the surface units have been kind of identified to be assigned to each of the buildings. So for the A1 building, there are 20 surface stalls that have been assigned according to these plans. For the A2 building, an additional 16 stalls. For the A3, an additional 31, and then for the A4, an additional 43. Again, excluding any numbers that may have been assigned for on-street parking on the private portion. The B1 building, each will have its attached garage. So there's 20 stalls, and then an additional 8 surface stalls. The C1 and C2 buildings, there will have 16 stalls in the attached garages per building. And then the C1 building has an additional 8 surface stalls. C2 has 3. For the C3 and 4 buildings, they'll have 20 stalls in their attached garages per building, and then 4 surface for the C3 and 19 for the C4. The C5 building, the attached garage can accommodate 8, and then there are 10 surface stalls. Now, we did talk with the applicant's consultants regarding the clubhouse because originally there weren't any stalls that were assigned to it. So we want to thank you for identifying 10 surface stalls, and then there will be an additional 3 or so that will be provided on the private street portion. All told, we have 176 underground, 84 attached, and 172 surface stalls. And parking, you'll recall, is based on the number of bedrooms for multifamily. So studio efficiency and 1-bedroom units require 1.5 parking stalls per unit. 2-bedroom require 2 stalls per unit, and 3-bedroom and above, 2.5 parking stalls per unit. So that would equate to 401 for the development, and the development actually exceeds that minimum number. These are the elevations for each of the buildings. I'm not going to go through each of these, but I do want to call your attention to the percentages that were incorporated, because while we did have the change in the materials whenever we were talking about the PUD, the percentages are still per code, and that it requires a 3/4 majority approval for the use of fiber cement. And also a minimum 65% of the total exterior wall area of multifamily residential buildings must be brick or decorative masonry. So like the other apartment complexes that don't technically meet the letter of the code with regard to brick or masonry, it requires the Plan Commission to make a determination as to whether or not the proposed materials are acceptable and acceptable in the percentages that are proposed. So these are the A1 through A4 buildings. I'm just going to go rapidly through these. The elevations for the B1 building, the C1 and C2 buildings. You will note that there is an old elevation in here. These should be shingles on the roofs. The C3 and C4 buildings, and the C5 building. And we've seen the clubhouse previously. And we've also seen renderings. This is what would be seen from 27th Street, kind of from the southwest. And this is the entrance, the clubhouse, and a different view of the clubhouse. So the monument sign was only incorporated for reference. The proposed location looks like it's outside of all utility easements, and the dimensions meet the code requirements, so it doesn't actually need Plan Commission approval, it just needs a sign permit. There are no trash enclosures, however, they would not be allowed in the front or street yards, and that's for any kind of roll-offs or bins or what have you. So there are 2 options. One is to hold the entirety until the landscape plan is approved at the 26th meeting, in which case the Plan Commission could consider the rest of these at that meeting. That's what was recommended in the report. There was a discrepancy in the last paragraph, and that was saying that we would work with the applicants and their consultants to address any of the remaining issues. That would be something that we would incorporate into a suggested motion that would recommend approval. And there's a typo here, so let me fix that real quick. That would be brought back for Plan Commission review at the October 26th meeting. So you have 2 options. You can hold it and review everything on the October 26th meeting, or you can approve the plans conditionally as normal, with the exception that the master landscape plan has to be brought back to the Plan Commission for review and approval at the October 26th meeting before anything further can happen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. This was discussed a little bit. Commissioner Sullivan threw out that compromise going forward with this. So, again, nothing with these buildings are going to change in reference to the landscape. as Carrie stated, just to be clear, building permits wouldn't be permitted until that master landscape plan is complete and through here on the 26th. So, guys, do you want a word before we go to commission, or?
Good evening, Dave Decker Properties, 250 North Sunny Slope Road, Suite 290, Brookfield, Wisconsin. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. The process is a little bit of a mystery to me, and I want to make sure that I share this idea with all proper respect. I don't mean to certainly complain or throw a dart, but we've had a landscape plan on file since February. We haven't made any changes to it of any substance. We haven't taken anything out or added anything in or moved anything. So it seemed like there was a lot of opportunity to comment on this prior to now. Then when we did receive some comments that expressing concern about the landscaping plan, that was actually Wednesday of last week. We got an email. I was actually out of town. I was out of state. We convened a conference call with the team right away to address those. We've submitted some drawings. So regardless of timing, we've had a positive relationship with staff. We've worked with them wherever there was a concern throughout this process. And I think that we can continue to do that now in a good faith manner. So I definitely hope that we can move forward with the second option here in terms of the suggested motion.
I do appreciate that. And again, maybe it is lack of communication, but we've run across this on other phases of this plan as well, with the vinyl siding and things of that nature. So, I really want to stick to consistency and process. Carrie?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to clarify that until a landscape plan is presented to the Plan Commission as part of the site building and landscape plan review, they're considered conceptual. So we can only give general information regarding landscape plans that are considered conceptual. We expect that landscape plans will change and be revised several times before they get submitted for a formal review. And landscape plans are never actually submitted as part of any other review for an approval unless it's part of a separate landscape plan review or site and building plan review. So during the PUD, we don't approve of a landscape plan. During a CSM, we don't approve of a landscape plan. It's only at these two options where we have the detailed plans to present for review and approval. So maybe that's a little bit of a clarification point, but that's why there weren't specific comments until we received these plans. They're conceptual.
Understood. Like our signs, we never. Conceptual is pointed out with the monument.
Unless they're presented for specific approval at that night, they're considered for reference until they're either fully designed and vetted, or until at some point a sign appeal is required or a master sign plan is required. It's pretty much the same thing.
Okay. I'll open it up. Commissioners, Christine?
I would go with consistency and I would go for option one.
I know.
That's okay.
We've been reviewing the plans, but if you want to stay with consistency, which I always support, then I would support option one.
Oh.
I don't have any other questions. Commissioner Carrillo, I don't think your mic is on.
I don't believe I have any other questions in regards to the rest of the plans. We've seen them a couple of times already. I'd be willing to, option two.
Okay. Thank you. Chris?
Option one to hold, or is that what?
Well, or if you have questions on the plans.
No, my questions have been answered.
Okay. Don?
This is just weird because this is like deja vu with the vinyl. Staff has a problem with the vinyl. They claim, we had no idea there was a problem, and this is exactly what's going on here. So I don't know what's going on, but we have 2 holds, and I'm not sure why they're getting this far where we're just sitting here talking about a hold. And maybe at another time we can get educated on, why these holds just come here instead of pushing it back and have them come back in 2 weeks with, getting it banged out before this. But clearly there seems to be some miscommunication. It seems like, staff hasn't had this amount of miscommunication with an applicant, to be quite honest. And there seems to be a lot of it with this one. So I am going to go along with staff on this, but I hope going forward we can get this figured out before we get to this point a third time.
I can understand that, and part of the challenge is that the applicant has the right to request review by the Plan Commission, regardless of whether or not staff supports it. So while we try and make every effort to present plans that we can provide our recommendation for, that we feel comfortable presenting to the Plan Commission, there are just certain times when staff and the consultants don't necessarily see eye to eye, and the Plan Commission has to make that ultimate determination.
Understood. And I appreciate that explanation. I was wondering if that was part of it, nope, we're going anyway. And we certainly voted against recommendations by the staff before. Several times. They're usually not too happy about it, but we also trust them a lot when they're working so hard, so many hours behind the scenes. And I would just say, work together and come up with something, come to us with something other than a hold. They do a lot of work, and we trust their judgment. And I don't like seeing these holds coming up here, recommendations for holds. That means something's not going on correctly in the background that we don't see. And I would like to see a little more of the work done, and not to say you guys should do all the work, but a little more, let's say, applicant staff being on the page a lot more than they have been before I can vote against what staff is going against. So in this case, I'm siding with option 1.
Brad, questions?
Well, Don did a lot of talking for me too, but I do support the staff, and I appreciate the effort they put into it and what happens. So I'm going to go with option 1.
Jossie?
I do have some questions for the applicant. So in regards to the building, it was noted that there's a high percentage of, what's the verbiage, Carrie?
So the requirement in code is that it's 65% of the building, the total exterior building should be brick or decorative masonry. There is the option for the Plan Commission to consider other materials, and the Plan Commission does require a three-quarter majority approval of the Plan Commission to use fiber cement. So with the percentages that are presented for each of these elevations, it would be up to the Plan Commission to determine if you're comfortable with that.
So my question was in regards to, can you provide a little more information in regards to, sometimes there's a very high percentage of the cement board versus the code, over that 65%, is that correct, Carrie? Over 65%?
Yes, the specific code section says that there should be a minimum 65% total exterior wall area of multifamily residential buildings being brick or decorative masonry. Now you will see that the elevation breakdowns provide what the elevations have each of their own breakdowns, and then each of the buildings have a total building percentage. The reason I always ask for an elevation is because we don't want lopsided buildings. So you don't want to put 65% of the total exterior of the building on the front. We always require it by elevation.
And so I'm sorry, but the question is then?
Yes, can you provide a little more information on if the goal is to get closer to that 65% for the cement board. Because it seems like the majority of the elevations are much greater than that 65%.
I think that in working with staff, we tried to come up with something that was workable and consistent with what other projects that had been approved. And my understanding was that this was a good approximation of that. I think that what we've come up with is, a very attractive building. I'm a lay person. I can't get into the details of, the percentage of a different building material look. I just, from a big picture perspective, I think that we've come up with an attractive design that is certainly attractive in its own right, but also consistent with other developments in the city.
Okay. And another question in regards to traffic flow. Can you provide some information on how the traffic will flow in the area?
Yeah. Do you mind if we have Eric Derskowski speak to that?
Yes. So the intent is, as you know, we extended Orchard Way on the east side, worked with DOT to give the cul-de-sac in their ideal location. And then we have a right out, right in only at 27th Street, of which we just responded to DOT's last comments last week. So we're expecting an approval from them shortly. But the reality is we expect most traffic to be using that main entrance there. They're going to have to come from the south to enter. I believe, in theory, the adjacent traffic to the south could cycle through the site. But we're expecting most of our trips to come off of 27th Street. We looked at, we could fit semis through there. So we did look at that and made sure we can get those through there.
And so are these one-way streets?
These are two-way streets, sorry.
Oh, they're two-way?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then is there any specific signage in regards to this area?
We have stop signs at the intersection there that are just inside. And the DOT has looked at that and requested a striping there for that. So they have commented on that, and we pushed that intersection back even further than the original design per their recommendations. So yeah, there is signage there. At that location, there'll be stop signs at the other location as well.
Okay, thank you. And just another question, Kiri. So if I understood this correctly, with the discussion with planning, that's where the percentages came from for the building materials. So that is, has been reviewed by planning yet.
Well, I don't think that staff has made any particular recommendations for the use of fiber cement and brick masonry, what have you.
Okay.
We present something to the Plan Commission because if it doesn't meet that 65%, the Plan Commission can make the determination as to whether or not that's acceptable. And we've seen fiber cement used on other buildings before. It's just a matter of, are these percentages acceptable to the Plan Commission? Staff can't make that determination.
Okay.
We can only guide and provide as much, encouragement to meet that 65% as possible. But ultimately, the applicant has the right to ask.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything state?
No, not at this time, I guess.
Okay. Guess that leaves me. So as far as the proposed site plan, fiber cement, the whole thing, I think we've been through this. I think we got what we wanted when we talked about the vinyl and we went over the shingles versus the metal roof and all that. Regardless of whether the option is to hold or put it through tonight, bottom line is nothing's going to happen until the 26th with that master landscape. So, you would see this again on the 26th, or you'd approve it and it would sit idle. And it would relieve a step next time through, kind of the compromise that Commissioner Sullivan put forward. To just stop a lot of debate. I don't have a lot of issue. As Mr. Decker said, I do think it's a nice looking concept and a nice mix of cement, fiberboard, and brick materials out there. So, either way, again, every time we step out of consistency, when we do have PUDs or when we violate, our own codes for that matter, what it does is it allows the next applicant to come through and go, well, it happened over there. You did it for this guy. And then we debate the merits of, are we holding it up or are we not holding it up? Or is the sign big enough? And again, going in proportion to the buildings. If that's the case, then we should have put up a drive-in sign down at Amazon. They can make, if we're going to go that route. So that's why we work on the zoning code and things like that. So again, I know I'm kind of on a soapbox here about consistency, but we run across this quite a bit. So whichever way you guys want to go, because this ain't going anywhere until the PUD is satisfied, and that calls for the master landscape plan. So I just want to make that clear.
Just one additional comment. So if I'm understanding this correctly, to put this on hold, as was the other item, then they would come back.
You would see the exact same thing back here following the master landscape plan, just as it was presented tonight in items H and I, or whatever it was. You'll see the exact same thing. Whereas if this goes tonight, you'll see the landscape plan. Am I correct in that, Carrie?
Yes, so if you hold this item, then the decision would have to be made at the 26th meeting, following approval of the master landscape plan on the 26th.
And then we would re-ask all the questions of just what we went through with this.
So you don't have to debate.
We don't have to.
But yeah, and you'd have a second opportunity to ask questions.
Either way, this item gets voted on, if not tonight, then the 26th.
I was just going to say, if they both get hold, hopefully the minutes reflect a lot of those questions, and myself included, look over those minutes good, so we're not re-asking the same questions over again. I know I will. I can't remember day to day some of my activities, so 2 weeks can be a long time.
We will ask that the minutes be as close to verbatim as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. What's the flavor of the commission?
Fine.
All we need is a motion. I don't need a vote.
Well, Donnie moves that the Plan Commission holds action on the site, building, and related plans submitted by David Decker, Decker Properties, for the properties at 8100 and 8146 South 27th Street and 8100 South Orchard Way.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call starting with Matt, please.
Sullivan, aye.
Miller, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Zukowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, aye.
That will get us to announcements and adjournment. Dawn, we're getting back to the home stretch here, your farmer's market.
Yes, we have the very last week of regular market, 19. We have gone through 19 markets.
So if you're gonna get out there on Saturday, I think the weather's better this weekend, a little cooler. We're getting into the fall, but I'll get out there, support local.
Yeah.
And that'll get us to adjournment.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I have one small announcement.
About that, Carrie.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness, and we at the city are going to be having a pink day on October 20th. If anybody wishes to participate, we are asking for donations that will be made to the National Breast Cancer Foundation. I'm sorry, I probably don't have that exactly correct, but we're encouraging people to wear pink, make a donation. If you don't wear pink or if you can't wear pink, we will have ribbons available. We're asking people to bring in a treat and get aware of the facts, get treatment, get tested, and let everybody know that this is a disease that affects 1 in 8 women. Not only does it affect women, it also affects men, and male breast cancer is more often detected in males over 50. So we're asking people to get the facts and get tested, and also to celebrate those who have survived this disease, and to also remember those that we've lost. But it is supposed to be a day of celebration. So October 20th, If you have any questions, contact myself or Anna Spankowski. We're collecting the donations and kind of spearheading this effort.
Great. And you know, Carrie, thank you very much, because last week at council, I did wear a pink shirt and I did make the announcement that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I wasn't aware of what was going on here at the city, but I applaud you for your efforts. I myself have two friends that are cancer survivors of breast cancer. They're doing well, and you know, all prognoses are well for them. But as you said, this is an important subject. So if you could see fit, again, the 20th, that's next week.
Yeah, October 20th, which is a Wednesday, I believe.
Wednesday. So, I mean, we may not be here, but if you can take it upon yourself to donate, you may be helping research that saves somebody's life. So
there was an email blast that went out this morning, I believe. There will be one more with a few more links to some facts, figures, information, and we will have some handouts that if you want more information on any of this, we can certainly provide that to you. And there will be one more email blast that goes out with that information. So
if they'd like to donate, check, cash.
We're asking for checks to be made out to the organization themselves. Anything in cash will be submitted either by a cashier's check, or we'll figure out a personal check. It will be a donation that is not from the city, but from the team. So it's up to you however you want to make a donation. We're asking for it to be a minimum of $5, just because that seems to be a good amount, but you donate whatever you'd like to donate. If you want a ribbon, just let one of us know so that we can reserve one for you. You have your choice, a couple of different pinks, or some, encouraging words, or the ribbon on the ribbon, which is kind of redundant, but it happens.
Once again, is it the American Cancer Society, or
no,
specifically to the Breast Cancer Society?
It's the National Breast Cancer. I don't have the exact one, but we wanted to donate to a research foundation.
Okay. If you could share that via email, I'd appreciate that.
It should have gone out to all City Hall users, which I believe the Plan Commission should be part of. I will forward that to you. I will definitely forward that to you.
Please put it out to the commission. We'd appreciate that. Anything else? Any other things of interest? Okay, with that, adjournment.
Carla moves to adjourn at 8:17.
Seifert seconds.
And roll call, starting with Commissioner Carrillo.
Well, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Sullivan, aye.
Okay. Again, thank you to staff. I know it was kind of a late night, and could have been even later if we would have went through some signage on the first couple items. So, going forward, we will have some pretty heavy duty stuff going on coming down the stretch of the year here. So, do appreciate all the effort on your part, though. So, everybody have a good week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.